Indiana had to make a late comeback, a late final drive from Mendoza, hitting Omar Cooper Jr. to make it 27-24 when they were down 24-20. Indiana basically tried to lose, but couldn't bring themselves to the point of having to taste a loss. They tasted adversity, they tasted defeat, but they survived Penn State on the road thanks to Fernando Mendoza cleaning up some of his earlier mistakes from the first three quarters and putting on a spectacular drive, capped off with a toe tap catch by Omar Cooper Jr. in the end zone to take the lead. This channel will make you a college football expert and help you enjoy watching games and make more accurate predictions. So what are you waiting for? Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment your thoughts, and watch the video all the way through so that you can get the full package. And check the description and pinned comment for more ways to help yourself and this channel. 27-24 was the final score, and the catch of the year. Best catch I've seen all season long. Best catch that a vast majority of other analysts are saying is the catch of the year. The best catch they've seen all season long. That keeps Indiana undefeated. 10-0, 7-0 in Big Ten Conference play. At this point, with them being a 30.5-point favorite over the Wisconsin Badgers, and they're going to be a 3-4 score favorite over Purdue on the road as well, especially off the bye. I gotta think that Indiana is a lock to go to Indianapolis at this point. Don't let the locker room hear that, although I think after yesterday's performance, Cignetti is probably going to chew them out, and they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, review things on film, and correct things, because that was not a good performance. Penn State scored 24 points, and some of that was due to, a play here, a play there, where Indiana gave up a big play or a big gain. But I think the real difference between what Indiana did against Penn State on the road and what Ohio State did to Penn State at home is that Ohio State has high caliber alien athletes at wide receiver, and they had a healthy offensive line for most of the game, and Indiana did not. Indiana is just not quite as talented as Ohio State. One of my takeaways from this game is that, yeah, Indiana is a national title contender, but Ohio State's number one. There might be another team or two who are ahead of them. And a lot of that does have to do with depth, but also due to their current injury situation. I don't know if Indiana is dramatically thinner than some of the other teams at the top. I do think they're thinner, but much thinner. Several standard deviations thinner. I don't know. But they were without Surratt. Mendoza didn't play all that well. Charlie Becker at receiver for the Hoosiers played well. But the interception early fourth quarter where it felt like Mendoza didn't understand that Penn State has athletes that can quickly close on their assigned receiver or the receiver in their zone, or where he was missing guys, or Omar Cooper Jr. had that amazing catch in the fourth quarter, but late second quarter, Mendoza threw a perfect dime to the corner of the end zone and he dropped it. That, I think, is the biggest difference between Indiana and Ohio State, for example, right now. It's not the defense. I think both defenses actually played pretty similarly. The difference is the caliber of athlete at receiver, and the fact that Jeremiah Smith never drops anything, Carnell Tate doesn't drop anything, the fact that with Mendoza, he's more mobile than Sayin. He does have a bigger frame, but Sayin has had a higher completion percentage, not just because of his receivers, but I think he has the upside in quick release and accuracy, where he's a little bit better than Mendoza there. I'm not trying to make too many comparisons between the two quarterbacks. I think they're both good in their own right, and I believe Mendoza is better in certain aspects than Julian Sayin is. I think he's proven several times that he's clutch. We have not seen Sayin try to pull away from a close game. A lot of things have just been around him. Everything's worked. It's not saying he's not clutch. We just don't know it yet. And as for the arm strength, I don't know enough to go there, but the same throws that I've seen Sayin make that are beautiful bombs over the top, I've also seen Mendoza make. I think a lot of the quick game and quick release goes Sayin's way. But also, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest difference in this game that helped Penn State stay in it and make a comeback is that Ohio State can have one play for 70 yards over the top because they have elite NFL receivers, one of whom could be round one, pick one, and they have healthy tackles. So some of it's wrong place, wrong time for Indiana. Other things is because, no, they don't match up quite as well with Penn State and some of these other top teams, depending on who those top teams are, that an Ohio State does, for example. I still think after this game, though, that Indiana's a top 3 team. Are they number 1? I would put Ohio State there. Are they number 2? I think now that there's a debate between them and Alabama for that spot. I don't think Ohio State is the obvious number 1, but I think they have the strongest argument. If you want to say Indiana's number 1, with the win over Oregon and how they've played when healthy, I have absolutely no problem with that, but I'm not going to go there quite yet. You see it in the metrics where they did drop a few points, but not many. They're still clearly number 2 in FPI, number 2 in ESPN's efficiency, number 2 in S&P+. They played a Penn State team that is not well coached, is not all that good, but it's a tough environment, and Penn State actually, because they were able to stay in the game, due to Indiana not being able to pull away, Penn State started believing in themselves a bit. They started getting all hyped up. They had energy to them that they lacked in prior games. The environment certainly helped. It was Penn State's first home game since they fired James Franklin. And all of those things came together, and Indiana had to find a way to escape in a game where maybe if another team's playing in Happy Valley, it's already game over. But they won. And now they get to go back to the drawing board, and the best thing that can happen in a game like this is you look like crap, you don't play well, but you win anyway. So you get the best of both worlds. You don't get punished for playing badly, but you will be disciplined, and you will have to make corrections in practice and on film. It was such a clutch final drive, and it doesn't make up for the mistakes that Indiana made earlier with, that bad interception, some of the misses they had. I thought Mendoza played well as a runner. He is pretty good at that. It really helps Indiana's ground game. Indiana's offensive line had some good moments. I thought that they were better than Penn State in a run blocking situation, though to be fair, Indiana probably has the best rushing defense or one of the best rushing defenses in the country. Penn State does not. They got eaten alive, though, in pass protection. Both offensive lines did, but for Indiana's, I think it was very notable. Mendoza's just better able to clean up those things than a redshirt freshman quarterback making his 3rd start in the season. I mean, you look at Grunkmeyer, 22 of 31, completes 71% of his throws, averages 7.1 yards per attempt, QBR of 78.4, a touchdown and a pick. He had a QBR in the 80s against Ohio State. He's played well these 2 games in a row. The difference is, again, with Ohio State has the receivers to naturally stretch the field and quickly compound points and successful drives on Penn State, and that makes Penn State uncomfortable and gets them out of their game plan. Grunkmeyer is too young to have to make the game his own and carry the team, and he was able to have a long pass of 43 to, I believe, Trevor Pena, and able to make some really good throws, but you also have to wonder if not for Singleton's long run, do they ever take the lead? Or if not for Singleton making plenty of Indiana defenders miss on that 25-yard receiving touchdown pass, what happens? It was a collective effort for Penn State to play this well and for Indiana to honestly put themselves in a position to be down, instead of, if they play better in a few specific situations, if Mendoza doesn't throw the pick, maybe this game's never in doubt and they win by double digits. Mendoza had a QBR of 74.8, a touchdown, a pick. He also had a rushing touchdown, 218 passing yards. The final drive is really what prevented him from having one of his worst days in his Indiana career. And you can see that in some of the drives that Indiana had, and we'll get to those in a minute, but I want to pay attention to Penn State's drive chart and circle back to that. Look at their drive chart. Look at it from like about that third quarter where they get that field goal after the interception is thrown. Then they get a touchdown on an 84-yard drive and another touchdown on a 49-yard drive. That sequence where on 3 drives they score 17 points. And before that, punt, rare touchdown, fumble, half, interception. Then after that, punt, and then you have, 30, 40 seconds to get into field goal range, and they just can't do it. I really do think that Penn State's offense, look, they did play well, but Indiana defensively, I still think beat Penn State's offense. But the issue with the Hoosiers was their own offense either turned over the ball or quickly fizzled out, and as a result, Indiana's defense is on the field all day. And you also have that long run by Penn State from Singleton where the ref stood in a certain position and the Indiana DB didn't properly assess how to maneuver around the referee. So he gets stuck there. And instead of it being a 10-yard gain, it's like a 50-yard gain. So it's little things like that. Football's a game of inches where, again, if one Indiana defender there makes a better decision on how to place himself on the field so he can make that tackle instead of running into the referee, Penn State maybe never takes that lead. Or if Omar Cooper Jr., instead of having his left foot an inch off the white line, he doesn't have the discipline to not tap his toe down there. It's an incomplete pass, and maybe Penn State wins 24-27. And rest in peace to Penn State. They still cannot find a win against a top 5 team. Their only top 5 win since 2014 is against Urban Meyer, which I think ironically enough is almost quite fitting given some of the history of him in Ohio State versus, unranked talented teams on the road or underrated talented teams on the road. That's it. They're still searching for that win. They couldn't find it against Day. They couldn't find it against Cignetti. They have not found it against Lanning. You look at Indiana's drive chart, the touchdown, field goal, touchdown from the fumble, and then a field goal from the interception out of the half. And I think that series right there says more of who Indiana is than the fourth quarter. But that's what one mistake and play that's pretty inconsistent through 3 quarters can do, especially if it's from the quarterback. That one interception put Indiana in a very precarious position from leading and, being in control to things almost falling apart. And then you have that final touchdown drive after the punt, which Indiana's defense had to come up big there to make sure that punt wasn't the final time that Indiana saw the football. Some takeaways that I have from this matchup are that Indiana got rostered. The good news about this is they had the opportunity to get rostered against Iowa, and they didn't. They trailed for a little bit in that second quarter, but they won in a similar fashion that Oregon did. And they didn't get rostered by Oregon, and an Oregon that was healthier. In fact, if anything, they rostered Oregon in Autzen. This game reminded me of, Texas Tech with their talent is just able to mostly bully people. But against Arizona State, they played a close game, and some other games this year, it was back and forth between some teams. This game reminded me of Texas Tech playing on the road against Arizona State. Now, Penn State does not have Arizona State's staff, but they do have a much more talented roster. And while Fernando Mendoza is the starting quarterback for Indiana, not the backup, he played pretty poorly at times, and his first 55 minutes of play were absolutely mediocre at best, especially relative to the performances he's put together for us at different points in the season. So Indiana played a very, very bad game. One of their worst games of the year. They looked sloppy. They were not disciplined. They were not tackling the best. Very rare things from a Curt Cignetti team. And they won anyway. And that's a good thing. That is also a bad thing in the sense that you have to take every game for what it is and add it to a part of the sample. And if you were someone like me who was looking at Indiana as, well, depending on what they do here in these next few games, they could be power rated ahead of Ohio State, this is not the Saturday to then do that. Like, this is the Saturday that shows, yeah, in the Big Ten hierarchy, Ohio State's 1, Indiana's 2. It's the same thing from a national power ratings angle. Like Texas Tech and Texas A&M all played better than Indiana did relative to the competition they played. But you can't also take the other extreme angle and say that Indiana sucks and they're actually a bad team and they're very overrated. They're not. They're not one bit. I think they're still a national title contender. Look at what the sportsbooks think. The sportsbooks barely dropped their odds for Indiana winning the Big Ten and winning it all after this game, after they looked like complete garbage for different drives and at different points. So they got rostered, yes, but unlike last year when they got rostered and they totally fell apart, they were able to respond and come up clutch and beat Penn State's roster at certain things to close out the game. Their defense is elite. Just the offense and specifically Mendoza put them in a hole. They weren't perfect. They had some missed tackles, but this was one of their worst games. No coincidence. It's against one of the more talented offensive lines and running back groups they faced, and yet their run defense, they held Penn State to 2.3 yards per carry outside of that long run from Singleton, which that's something you can clean up. It wasn't this massive, complete open hole where no one was within 10 yards of him. There were safeties in position, but Singleton out-angled one, and the other one ran into the referee. Those are spatial awareness and situational awareness things that you can clean up very, very quickly. It's like how with Ohio State, they let Katron Allen have that run very early on, but after that, they didn't allow any more long runs. They allowed some runs that were successful, but a lot of that had to do with Penn State cleaning up different things, running to the outside with tosses, and their offensive linemen pull blocking pretty well. Indiana did a very good job limiting Penn State's rushing attack, and really outside of maybe that one play and 1.5 drives, they beat that Penn State offensive line to a pulp. Mendoza had a good moment at the end. He also played poorly. He also was clutch. We'll just have to see how he performs in these final 2 games, because over the past, I would say, 3 games, including this last one, Penn State, Maryland, and UCLA, he has not looked as good as he did against, say, Illinois. Oregon, I think, was his best game of the year outside of that pick 6. Never really had a bad play. I'm interested to see if he can maybe pick it up a little bit. He was saying some stuff before this game that was rat poison-ish, where we'll run for, 360 on you if we can't throw on you. That's something that you usually should keep to yourself. You always got to get better. You always got to be searching for ways to get better. Coming out this early in the year and basically trying to flex your muscles is not a good thing because you haven't really won anything yet. So this is a game that humbled Indiana in a way. For Penn State, it showed that, roster-wise and coaching staff-wise, it's incomplete. Terry Smith is a wonderful leader, a great coach of young men, but he's not an elite CEO. He's not head coach material for Penn State. He is positional coach material, maybe co-defensive coordinator material, associate head coach, assistant head coach material. Him and Cignetti exchanging kind words after the game was a pleasant sight to see. It's rare that you see that amongst college football coaches these days. But Penn State needs a go-getter. They need someone who, much like Cignetti, can be aggressive, can hold his young men accountable, and help develop them to victory. And I think, whether that's Brian Hartline or whether it's not, that Penn State will find that person because they have talent. They have some great young players. They have potential. It is a fantastic environment. It is a storied program in college football. I ultimately think at the end of the day that they are going to get someone who Penn State deserves, who they deserve, and someone who is going to help them win and perform better in big games than James Franklin, who pretty well documented. I mean, there's a reason why Penn State wasn't able to close out this game, and why after Ohio State was really able to force their hand, that Penn State sort of looked like they mentally quit, and a reason why they couldn't finish off against Iowa. That's not all on this current staff. A lot of that's like a cultural thing from Franklin, too, that they need to purge. Penn State's favored over Michigan State. They'll probably be favored in their final 3 games, but the odds of them winning all of those games are particularly slim. Nebraska's a good team. Rutgers is 1 win away from bowling, and Michigan State on the road, especially with Michigan State off a bye and them not firing Smith yet. Michigan State's going to be desperate to earn as many wins as they possibly can to keep their coach and roster spots safe entering next year. So you need to really put forth an effort in these final 3 games that we have not seen from Penn State all season long if they want to go to a bowl game. Odds say Penn State will miss a bowl game for the first time since 2020. If you count out the COVID year, it's for the first time since the sanctions. And if you count out the sanctions, I think it's the first time since like 2004 that they're going to miss a bowl game in the regular season under normal circumstances. Just a historic collapse, worse than Florida State last year from the Penn State Nittany Lions. As for Indiana, this was your toughest game in November. This was your toughest game after the Oregon game. It was ugly. It was close. Ideally, you wanted to win by more, and hopefully you can draw from this win and learn some things, because playing like this will not win you a title. It won't get you win over Ohio State. You won't even win in the playoffs, most likely, if you play like this. But Wisconsin and Purdue are likely going to be dominant victories. And at that point, you're 12-0. You're participating in the Big Ten championship game, which I don't think any Indiana fan ever expected. And look, as long as you show up in the playoffs and probably win some playoff games, Indiana's actually, they have minus odds to reach the college football playoff semifinals, so they should win a playoff game or 2, or maybe even they win it all and they win 3, because if they're 12-0 entering the Big Ten title game, they are getting that first round bye. And then the season is a tremendous success. The job that Curt Cignetti has done over these most recent 2 years is the most impressive thing from a college football coach by a mile over that 2-year stretch. It's the most impressive thing. As for the Big Ten standings here, all this did was keep Indiana in that lock to Indy spot. That's really all this did. If they didn't lose to Penn State, it's very unlikely they're going to lose to Purdue or Wisconsin, let alone play them within 3 scores. So I believe Indiana playing 2 teams that haven't, well, Wisconsin won a Big Ten conference game last night, but playing 2 teams who have 1 combined win in Big Ten play, I think bodes well for them to reach the Big Ten championship game. And as for Penn State, you're just searching for like 3 Big Ten wins against opponents that you're all more talented than. So go out there and fight. Catch of the year keeps Indiana undefeated. I don't think there's anything else to say other than Curt Cignetti right now is putting together the most impressive coaching performance of the year. Are they the number 1 team? I wouldn't peg them that way, but they're close, and I do think one thing you cannot dispute is that they play hard, and this is the best coached team in all of college football. Thank you for watching. It's my mission on College Football with Sam to make you the most informed, knowledgeable, and entertained fan as possible. We aren't perfect, but we hit the nail on the head more often than we hit our thumb with the hammer. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment, and if you're here, you've probably already watched the whole video. So thank you for doing those things.